Welcome to this video. My name is Eva, and in this video I will talk about relationships. So what I did in past relationships and how I want to change it and what I want to do better in the next relationship. Why do I make this video? Because I really hope that it will help you if you're struggling with similar things, or maybe it just helps you to reflect a little bit. So first of all, one thing that I did that I want to do different now, and I'm working actively to change that pattern, is first of all, I put my partner or just the guys that I was dating on a pedestal, and I devalued myself. And that's obviously not good, because in a relationship you want to have two people who are equal and you want to have that balance. But if you devalue yourself, you automatically put yourself some steps down, and that's just not a good thing to do if you want to have a healthy relationship. And I know why. I know that it was because I had, maybe still have, lower self-worth, and I know why, because it's from my childhood. And what really helped me was the books of Stephanie Stahl. She's a psychologist, a German psychologist. She's quite popular in Germany, and she has really great material on those topics, and to really recognize that when someone devalues you in childhood, it has nothing to do with you. It says everything about the other person. So, but as children, obviously, we don't understand that. So, when someone is mean to you as a child, you take it in and you say, "Oh, this person is treating me terrible, so I'm a terrible person." And obviously, when you're an adult, you recognize that this is not true. When someone is treating you terrible, the other person has problems, but so this was definitely a process for me to understand that what happened in childhood, and to understand that I'm not a child anymore and I have worth. And yeah, so this was something that I actively changed and trying to change still, probably. Another thing that I did in my past relationship that I want to change now is I was reactive and I projected on my past boyfriend. So these are two things. First of all, reactivity is when you just react how you feel. So I was very identified with my feelings. So for example, I felt abandoned or I felt anxious. So, and just because I had this feeling, I thought in my mind, okay, I had this feeling, so this was because my boyfriend did this. Whereas in reality, what I was doing very often is I was projecting my childhood or my relationship, especially with my dad, onto my partner. So for example, when my ex-boyfriend, he would just go out with friends, which is completely fine, but I felt so abandoned and so sad, and my feelings had not so much to do with my ex-boyfriend, and they had so much to do with my childhood, actually, that I felt really abandoned maybe in childhood. And I think what I'm trying to do, what I'm learning step by step, is to stop displacing my past things onto my partner, and to always, I mean, that's just something that I want to practice and practice and try to, before I get angry with my partner, to actually question myself, am I angry at my partner or am I angry at my parent or at my dad or my mom? And to not displacing the anger or to displacing the sadness. And yeah, so for me that was a big like eye-opening, that many times actually you have to ask yourself before you react, is this actually a reaction that is justified, or am I overreacting? Because many times actually some people, me included, are probably overreacting. So another thing that I've learned is to not identify myself anymore with my inner child. So when I was in my past relationship, I didn't even know that this inner child exists, and I didn't know anything about it. So what happened was that I was very identified with my inner child, my feelings. And inner child, it's a term that comes from psychology, and it basically says that you have inside of yourself this inner child, which is basically all the kind of the memories, the good and negative memories from your childhood. So for example, and when, again in this case of abandonment, when my ex-boyfriend, he met with some friends, I felt super abandoned, and this was also just from my childhood. So my inner child, like I was in this apartment and I was just so anxious and so sad, and this was my inner child, and I was identified with this inner child, so I didn't know how I should get out of this. So I didn't have any ways, what can I do to not feel so anxious anymore. And I think what I've learned now is, and that is so important, to recognize this inner child, but to show up as your own parent. So to say to this inner child, hey, I know that you're sad, it makes sense. As a child, you had this situation happen to you, of course you're sad. Everyone who would have had the same childhood, and maybe also your genetics, would feel sad right now, so it does make sense. However, you're now, like, I'm now an adult and I'm with you, so you don't need to be scared anymore. And to step away from this identification with your inner child and step towards towards becoming your own parent, your own coach, your own motivator, your own friend. That was a huge step, and I think that's really important also for the next thing, to just take responsibility for your own triggers. Because, for example, just a random example, you have the trigger of jealousy. Maybe your past partner cheated on you, or your parents' relationship, there was a lot of cheating. So now you have this trigger of cheating. So for example, now your boyfriend would go out with friends and there's also a female person there. And so you have this trigger of jealousy, then you have to take and of course your partner is someone that you can trust and you know that he would never cheat. Then of course it is your responsibility to deal with your trigger. Like, you should not say to your partner, hey, you can never leave the house anymore because I'm jealous. No, you have to take responsibility for your trigger. And for example, if your boyfriend goes out to meet with friends, you have to deal with those feelings and to have to deal with, like, for example, use meditation, whatever, to deal with your trigger. And I think that this is something that I also didn't know, and that I know now, how important it is to take responsibility for your own triggers. And triggers, they come from childhood, and it was not our fault that those things happened to us, but it is now our responsibility as adults to deal with those triggers. So yeah, and then the last step that I want to do different is actually, or that I did now. So in my past relationship, I knew that I have kind of a father wound, and I knew that things were not really okay, but I didn't really know how I can heal from it. So in the past, 1.5 years, or actually the past years, many years, I did a lot of healing work specifically to heal this father wound. So the steps that really helped me was to learn everything about the past of my parents, like how did they grow up, also how do they show up in relationship, and why are they behaving in the way that they do. And this really helped me so much to take things less personally. So when, for example, my dad reacted in certain ways, to understand this was not because of me, like this was not because I did certain things as a child. This is his personality because of his upbringing. So to take things less personal, the next step for me was to write a letter to my dad and just put everything into that letter. It can be so long, and just everything that you wanted always to say to your dad. Let it be, accusations, but also what you're thankful for. Just a letter with everything. And this helped me so much to get clear on that situation, and also on my feelings that I have towards my parents. And the next step for me was grief. So this took a lot of months and even years, where I was in a stage of grief and just saying, oh, like, of course, as I said, you have certain expectations for your parents, or also for the relationship that you have with your parents. So of course you have grief because your expectations weren't met, and it's okay to have grief, of course. But after that step is actually in my case, I mean, every healing journey is so different, but in my healing journey, to accept reality and to get out of this grief, and again to say, okay, of course it is sad, but I'm not a child anymore, I'm an adult. Life is kind of tragic in some ways, and life is just, there's no happy end in life. Like, in some ways there's just no happy end, and to accept certain things, to adjust your expectations, to set your boundaries in some ways, and also to let go. So that helped me so much. And I think when I was in my past relationship, this process of healing, it was not finished. So I was always reacting, not always, but in some ways reacting from this open wound that I have from my childhood. So, but these steps really helped me. And I think it's not a process that is completely finished. I think that I still have to work a lot on myself, and I want to work on myself and heal, and it's an ongoing process. So I'm just really grateful that I came across so many great healing modalities. So some things that I want to keep learning and improving is, for example, I really want to get more into nervous system regulations. It's also just taking responsibility of your own happiness, your own calm state, your own triggers. Another thing I want to work on even more is inner child work, to really build that compassionate relationship with my inner child, because I think how I was operating in life, it was not great, because I operated from a, even though I didn't know, but subconsciously I operated from a self-hate perspective. So I was just, what I've heard about childhood, I took it in, and that's how I operate. So, for example, I think when you're treated bad as a child, instead of saying, okay, this person treats me bad, you cannot do it because you're kind of a child. As a child, you're really self-focused, so you start to hate yourself. And for me, it was really important to get out of this self-hate and to completely change the way that I function. And now I'm working with my inner child in a much more compassionate way. So inner child work, then of course shadow work is basically what are the areas that I'm maybe not so proud of, and to work on those and also have compassion for those. I really want to get into breathing work. I think that is a really great modality. Then of course meditation, and yeah, just being kind to myself. I think that's really what I want to improve even more, to be kind to myself. So this was kind of how I want to show up in relationships now. I think that the goal is really not to be perfect, but the goal is definitely for me to look at the things that I want to heal. I think it's really not about so much improving yourself, it's more about healing and showing up in a relationship in a more conscious way than I did before, and a lot more compassionate way towards myself than I did before. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. It was probably, for some people who are new to this, it probably sounds really strange with inner child and all of that, and I recognize that. I think for many people who watch the video, they have to have already a background of healing or maybe psychology, therapy, whatever, to take those things in. But yeah, so I just wanted to say that, and I really hope that this video helps some people. So thank you so much for watching. I'm actually a nutritionist, so if you're interested in raw food, or you're interested in a vegan lifestyle, in improving your diet and nutrition, then definitely check out my website, check out my products, because I have a lot of value to share. So I'm really excited for that. So I really hope that you have a great day, and maybe you want to start to change your life, change your diet, and check out my website. And I hope you have a wonderful day. See you in my next video. Bye bye.